Live in Corporate is brought to you by Doximity. Doximity is committed to fostering an inclusive and diverse work environment where differences are valued, practices are equitable, and employees experience a sense of belonging that allows them to bring their full, authentic selves daily. As medicine's largest network, there's an elevated level of responsibility to everything we do. We don't take that responsibility lightly and are committed to working towards a more equitable world inside and beyond our virtual office walls. So if you want to learn more about Doximity, go to your app store and type in DOXIMITY. Again, that's DOXIMITY.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Break Room, a podcast where we talk about Black mental health and wellness in the workplace. Something we always like to point out. Dr. Nikki is a therapist, but she is not your therapist.
Thank you for that reminder. I am not your therapist.
I'm not your therapist. My name is Dr. Jide Bamashikbin. I'm a health psychologist and a father of two and a husband to my beautiful wife. And I'll pass it over to you, Dr. Nikki, before we just get right back into our conversation we were having.
I'm so ready to get back into it, too. So I am Dr. Nikki. I'm a licensed psychologist, PsyPAC credentialed, and sex self-confidence coach. I am in Houston, Texas, and I work with Black women and couples around relational and sexual wellness and racial healing and racial equity work. With small to mid-sized organizations. And we're picking back up on this fire conversation around misogyny war, and using the latest experience that a young woman that went viral on TikTok and Twitter, on social media. She went viral all over the internets, in talking about her experience with Black men, and particularly around Black men and emotional intelligence. And so that video took off. She got doxxed as a result. She lost her job as a result. And then the other part that we didn't talk about in part one is that, I've continued to follow her. She's still active on TikTok, and she's had to change her phone number. She's had death threats. So even though she's lost her job, which I think is like ridiculous enough, this harassment has continued for her, and I know that it's been a traumatic experience for her. I can only imagine, and I deeply sympathize for her, and some parts of it empathize with. Like, there is a bit around the magnitude of going viral especially for me as a therapist, right, where most of my work is really intimate and one-on-one. To go viral is a really odd sense of vulnerability and like exposure. And I don't think we talk about that sort of trauma in and of itself, but she's had a really rough time. And so Jide and I were having a lively conversation around promotion of stereotypes, misogyny war. I'm gonna say respectability politics, Jide. I'm saying some of it is respectability politics, white gays. In the previous episode. So, hey, if you're just joining, you got to go back and listen to part one. You cannot just pick up here. So,
this is Everybody Hates Black Woman Part 2.
Oh, that's right. Everybody
Hates Black Woman Part 2. That's the title. So, because I want to make sure I was listening right. I believe your last point was that, listen, y'all have as a Black man, you may have a right to be upset, but you'd rather see us defending her and calling out the toxic Black men. Do I have that correct? Am I missing a part of that?
And for me, I don't even need you to necessarily defend her directly, but at least call out the toxic masculinity, right? So I'll just use myself again as an example, and I've seen this happen with her, right? When these things happen, Black women are flooding the comments, giving her support. Obviously, there are other Black women that have disagreed with her or taken the other side, but the vast majority of women have been in support of her, at the very least showing her sympathy for the experiences that she's gone through. And then the Black men that are in the comments are sort of running amok, and other Black women will engage them. But I don't see other Black men saying, that comment's off limits. Hey, you could disagree with what she said, bro, but you went too far. Like, that level of engagement, I don't see happening in public spaces.
Okay. Let me see. Well, I feel like from my viewing of the situation. So I haven't been on Twitter for maybe the last 2-3 weeks or so. But I was on Twitter around this time. Mm-hmm. And from my viewing, I felt like I did see black men there were, so she posted this video comes out, right? Yes. Mostly it was black men who are like, man, I don't like this. I don't like the way you're talking. But there are definitely black men saying, listen, she's right. Y'all are not emotionally intelligent. Y'all are not communicating, right? And on the flip side, there are women who are saying, she's right. I agree with her. But also other ones saying, nah, I don't like the way you talk to her. Like, if you're a therapist, right? And that's a point I think we have to talk to later on in this episode, yes. Right? Yes. What is the role of a therapist in this conversation, right? And how, and the way you have to present yourself on the internet, and even outside of a therapist, just a working person. Because what's important is, and this is the big difference between, I think, you and her. You work for yourself. You're an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. When you work for somebody else, right? It's different. I'm not defending the job, but it's entirely different. So for me, I felt like there were toxic comments, but I felt like it was a lot of talking past each other. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It was a lot of talking past each other and not really listening. But honestly, I think most people were somewhat in the middle. They were like, what she said was kind of true. I don't necessarily think she should have lost her job. But you kind of took it too far. That's where I felt like most of the tenor was. It landed right around there.
Okay. So let me at least
on Twitter from my viewing.
And that's what I wanted to say. I didn't see what happened over on Twitter. So let me own that my viewpoint is from the place of TikTok. I can't, the way my brain processes, I can't process Twitter. I think most of Twitter is people over talking each other or mistalking. Like I feel like it's always just chaos in 160 characters or whatever.
That's true.
So, and the asynchronicity of it just does not work for this brain. That's part of why I have a fear of Twitter. Mm-hmm. TikTok, is a little bit improved in that you can, respond verbally, and that's a form of communication that works better for me. So there's a different level of sort of exchange that happens. So I'm basing my comments about this experience with her.
The TikTok discourse.
From the TikTok discourse.
I'm talking
and
then
the other
discourse.
Piece. Yeah. So maybe we have two different samples and so we can't compare them at all. But I think the other thing that you just said that is important and why, yes, when you work for someone else, there is a different level of vulnerability and threat that's attached to anything that you do in the social media sphere, right? Because then, as a representative of that company or organization, you could bring bad light onto that, right? And then that starts affecting people's money and people don't play, right? So it's all about the optics. And we know that people have lost their jobs because of optics, right? Not necessarily because the company has like this high ethical or moral standard, but because they don't want to be seen as looking bad out there. So I get that. For me, even though I work for myself, if people were to call the licensing board and I lost my license, that's my livelihood gone. So the threat feels equally tenacious for me as it does for her.
Yes, but there's a higher bar for that than for getting fired. Those I don't view them as equivalent. Like because you're listen, my boss could call me. My boss can text me right now and say, "Pack up your stuff. You're fired right now," and I don't have nothing to say or do with it, right? Versus the licensing board, you'll probably have a hearing, right? Won't you get a hearing?
They can suspend my license. And would you go to a therapist who had been under investigation? Even if you don't need to know details. my shit would be flagged.
I get your point.
Right? And that to me feels more of a threat. Like, cause it's me. Solo dolo. Like, so if that gets taken away, which is why I go back to my experience, right? Like, I felt literal panic run through my body. And I was like, did I misrepresent something? Like, did I do something actionable? I don't think that I did, but oh my God, is it possible? And let's remember the basis of this conversation. Whether it's technically actionable or not, I'm still a Black woman. And so the board review, right? Like the rules are totally different for me. And so I think that's why I think this experience is so frightening. Because also, if it can happen once, it can happen again.
So, also another part of this conversation that's important is she identified herself as a therapist in these videos.
And that is now
said that 90% of her clientele is black men. So the other part about this is you're after trafficking in negative stereotypes about this group, because to me, nowadays, y'all don't even have the education or credentials to be talking to an itch, especially at the side of your neck. I'm sorry, like I can't sit here and say, well, it's because she's a black woman, so it's different and it's okay. No, it's not okay. It's a negative stereotype about black men. Even if you said it, I would be like, Nikki, I love you, but I don't like when you talk about me or talk about my group like that. I feel like I can have the right to say that. I feel like I can have the right to say that. You know what I'm saying? She's talking negative stereotypes about the group that she said she was that's 90% of her group. Like, people, you got to be, hey.
Okay, so 2 points. 2 points. One, I do think that's where she made a misstep, because I was following her, like I said, for months before this. And then I went to her profile and it said that she was a therapist. And I was like, she a therapist? Okay. But her content up until that point had not really linked in her professional experience with her personal experience. So she had really, in my perception, talked about her personal experiences, particularly around dating. And that's the part that I was resonating with, because that is also very much my experience. So it was outstanding to me that she's a woman in her 20s and I'm a woman in my 40s. It's outstanding to me that my experience is the same as hers, as is many of my other single black woman friends, as many of my clients. And so I was resonating with that. I think she made a misstep when she began to infuse her professional work with her personal TikTok. And I think that is where she set herself up to be in a dangerous position, which is why I don't have a personal TikTok. Whatever you see on TikTok, the most I'm gonna do, like there's I don't think you're on TikTok, but right now there's a viral trend of using a She-Hulk filter, and black women that are like with the She-Hulk filter as green. My God, we look gorgeous. That's as much as I'm gonna play around with a trend, right? I'm not doing TikTok dances. And all of the content that I'm putting out there is related to my work as a sex self-confidence coach, a sex therapist, right from that lens. So I'm not getting on there and ranting and raving about Queen Elizabeth. I'm not getting out there and ranting and raving about all these other things, because I understand that the Twitter is the wild, wild west, right? And once it's out there, it is forever out there and anybody can see it. Like there's no control over who can see it, right? And I don't think she thought that through. And part of me feels like, a big part of me feels like this could have been, if she worked in a different environment, this could have been a learning opportunity for her to get some growth as a therapist, to figure out how to recalibrate that line, to have a little bit of more of an understanding around what's acceptable in terms of your presentation as a professional and what's not. Now, I'm going to say one last thing related to that, and then I will open it back up for you. And as a black woman, I was in academia for 17 years, and I had a lot of anxiety around how I felt like I could show up in certain public spaces when I was experiencing discrimination. Because my thought would be, going to be University of Houston professor, blah, 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 blah. Like the media is not going to spin in my direction. And I still think about that as a therapist, right? And it's fucking unfair. It is unfair that I have to be held to a certain standard that is different, and the margin for error is much thinner for me. But I recognize that as a reality, and I try to find as much way for me to live with as much integrity as I possibly can while keeping that in mind. But I think that is also a byproduct or an outcome of the fact that I am older, right? I have more lived experience, more professional experience, and I'm of a different generation. And I do think there's a huge generational context here that maybe has not been fully directly talked about, right? I don't think that Bree sees anything wrong with how she shows up on TikTok and her being perceived as a professional.
Yes.
that's not the context that I come from, right? And so I don't know where the line is around that.
I think part of the issue. So here's another, because we've disagreed a lot this episode, which is unusual. Actually, usually we agree. So I like that.
I know. So I was like, let's get into it.
And I want to acknowledge that I do really hear what you're saying, and I agree with certain points of what you're saying. Like, and I hope you can hear what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
So I think the big part, a point where we agree, is that I do think this was a time for learning, right, and growth and accountability and whatever. And maybe somebody at her job could have pulled her aside and said, like, sis, I also have trouble dating, you know, but you can't post stuff like this on the internet and identify yourself as a therapist and blah 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 blah, right? But with the nature of today's internet, and this is a whole other topic, there's always somebody to defend you. No matter how bad no matter how awful what you've done is, and I'm not saying she's like the worst person ever, right? But no matter what you've done, there's people on the internet who'll sit there and defend what you've done, right? And you read those comments, and you just allow yourself to dismiss all the other ones. The people who are overly negative of you, and the people who maybe having like a good point, right? Like, you know, sis, like, I don't know if this was it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't hate you, I don't whatever, but I think you could have moved smarter. But with the way that internet goes and the kind of support that you get from other people, they could just go, no, I'm right. I don't have to take accountability because these other people said I'm right. You read these comments, all these people agree with me. I don't need to whatever. Right. So I think that there's also a little part of it, because even her video where she was like, y'all, I got fired, it was still like, look at y'all call Massa to get me fired, like all that stuff. And I'm like, sis, like, I you know,
and this is again, and we will continue to have conversations today, because I agree. Like there is nothing in her content that is contradictory to my experience or that I disagree with in my lived experience. And even in like, yes, me and you are gonna be good. We're good now. I love having a robust discourse, debate. Because I know you and I know your character. But here's the thing that I just want to like do my therapist thing for a moment and talk about my process, right? Like every time I hear you talk about her disparaging Black men, there's a level of defensiveness that comes up for me, because I'm like, but you don't know how dirty they are out here, right? And so it feels, my defensiveness is that feels invalidating. And I think that is in part what Bree was reacting to. I think the vehemence and the passion and the frustration and the language choices that she uses is a reflection of the sense that we as Black women who are regularly mistreated by Black men, feel gaslit. Like we feel like we're screaming into the void and no one is listening. And I would be much more heartened by a conversation that said, I hear you, Dr. Nikki. I know I don't know dudes like that. I don't have dudes like that in my life, but I hear that is real for you. Like
I have sisters. Like I have 3 older sisters. I promise. They're so bad it feels alien to me. You know, they're so bad it feels like outrage. Yeah. I've heard. Yeah. Yes.
And I think that. So what I heard was that she was talking to them, and because it is so alien to you, it's so outside of your comprehension, I think it allows you to have a different level of objectivity around it. And I get it that you're a part of that, walking down the street or being perceived across the Zoom.
Exactly.
I get it that no one is going to see you as different than the men that she talked about.
Exactly.
But I want us to move to a level of being able to do the both and. And I think the both and is where the work really needs to come in.
You're such a therapist. I'm sorry. The both and is like, that's the most therapist-y thing you can say. You have to hold space for multiple things. Like, oh my God, you're such a therapist.
I am, like, to my core. It is a core identity, because that is how I see the world. And I think there's a part of me that feels like there's a really missed opportunity for the collective adult Black community, for us to really be able to say, like, why these dudes keep making these podcasts and having these platforms, and treating women like they treat them. I just saw another podcast where the guy was like, the value of pee is at an all-time low. Like, it's like it's only $16.99 because it's Netflix and chill. Like that's the value, and was equating a woman's vulva with her worth as a whole person. And these dudes are fully convicted in this reality, right? And so if you're a woman who
there's
wants
people who
to,
listen to them, that's the
people
bigger
who
issue. It's not
listen
just
to
that they're saying
them.
this. It's that
And-
these people have thousands and thousands of views on YouTube and whatever. You're absolutely right.
and the people that host the podcast oftentimes, not all the times, but oftentimes laugh rather than calling out or engaging or taking the opportunity to educate or therapy or whatever. And when I see that happening more often than not, it is the Black women who are not only the brunts of that misogynoir, but the ones actually pushing back on it. And I think that we need to have some serious conversations to say, I don't know dudes like that, but I believe these women that say that, and that must feel really, really, really awful.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be thinking about what does that mean for us generationally? Like at what point do we say, hey, like time out, we really need to we got to do something different. So I think it was a missed opportunity on a lot of different levels. Mm-hmm. And my worry is because of the backlash, Bree's not going to be silent because she has not stopped yet with the doxing and the threats and the trauma. She's still out there. Me, I probably would have shut down my little TikTok account and just been like, Lord, you're going to have to fix it another way. Like I'm going to have
Became a nun.
I'm going to have to figure it out another way. Right.
Yeah.
But so she's still out there doing that, and that's great, but it does make me wonder who will be silenced, or how much more difficult will it be for the next person to be believed, and etc.
Yeah. Well,
we're gonna agree to disagree on some.
We're gonna agree to disagree. Yeah, that's okay. But once again, I don't think she should have got fired. You know, I don't believe in people losing their livelihoods or whatever. And especially in this other part that you mentioned about the generational differences. Like, I was in MySpace in 10th grade. You know what I'm saying? And then Facebook, and then whatever, and all that stuff, right? Like,
right.
I haven't seen my MySpace page in decades, like whatever.
It
but
should be decades.
I would hope that nobody goes to that is like, oh man, like, you know, you pulled this, right, or you know, whatever. Like, there's a certain level of humanity that everybody should be able to have on the internet, right? To go and do whatever you want to have. But at the same time, when we talk about this, right, like, if there's a medical doctor, listen, not if, because was on Twitter and I've seen many medical doctors and whatever say the most awful, horrid stuff. I'm absolutely calling people on you. I'm absolutely going to complain about you. No, I don't want you to ever see another Black person in your life.
I agree.
You know, if you can say this in public, no. So that general point, I think that there's a level of care we have to put around it, right?
Okay,
because,
I agree.
You know, sometimes we step out of people step out of pocket, you know, and there has to be some mechanism to say, hey, what's up, right?
I 100% agree, and I do think this is why I talk about the both hand, and this is why I try to be really particular with my language, because I want to own and acknowledge that, like, yes, I have utmost respect for you. I know you as a human, as a Black man, as a father, as a professional. Respect you, admire you, like genuinely care for you as a person. So
I feel the same about you.
I know. So it would be like, I could list other people, right? So it would be equally problematic for me to be like, all Black men, right? Like, I don't want y'all saying that, all Black women, so I don't want to do that either. And I feel like patriarchy and the socialization around masculinity prevents Black men in particular from being open to that critique in a way that moves the conversation forward that Black women don't have the luxury of having.
There's a discussion about power here. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? And how power plays out in these sources. Who has the power? How can you use it? How do you respond to when somebody with less power, perceived, maybe says something? Because at the same time, right, if we're going to do certain analyses, right, there's a way that you could spin it, right, to say that who is a therapist who probably went to college, perhaps went to graduate school, to get on the internet and call Black men, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you have more power based on your education, right? Mm-hmm. There's a way to spin it that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then there's also the patriarchy analysis of it, right? Well, you're a man, right? So whatever, right? Like there's lots of different. It's complicated. I think is my general point. It is complicated.
It's complicated. Yes. Well, we gonna pause. Listen. Hey, break room audience. I feel like this is a conversation you all need to weigh in on. So let us know, like, what are you thinking? Where's the middle ground? Team G-Day? Team Dr. Nikki? Like, where are we? Is there a middle ground? Are we both wrong?
How is it Team G-Day and Team Dr. Nikki? You already waited.
We're not ready to talk about power. I'm claiming my power. You just laid it out. I'm going to use my power. I was like, maybe they won't notice. Maybe it'll be like subliminal. Dr. G-Day and Dr. Nikki. But no, it really is all love over here.
Always. And we're supposed to disagree. Like we're not always going to have the same opinion on stuff.
I was just about to say, this is why it really is always diversity for the win. Mm-hmm. We need to have different viewpoints. We can't all be thinking the same way. So mm-hmm. I love it. I feel like this is the spiciest conversation
by far.
We have. Yes, I love it. So yes, weigh in. Let us know. Definitely, as I always say, be a friend, tell a friend. Make sure you rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. We are back with season 3 of The Break Room, and I think we've set the bar really high for spicy. So we're gonna try to bring it this season. We hope to also have more guests join us, and we want to just really, really expand and broaden and diversify our conversation around Black mental health in the workplace. So as I wrap up, okay, so I'm going to take the last nerve.
That's right. I'm
sure you can weigh in too, right? So if you are new to The Break Room, then the last nerve is our opportunity to just have a little bit of a rant because, being Black in America, there's always someone after Blackness. There's always something. So the latest is, we knew about this like over a year ago, but Halle Bailey has been cast Halle Bailey. Oh God. Sorry. Halle Bailey has been cast as Ariel in the live action version of Disney's The Little Mermaid. And so one, let me just own generational stuff. I always like this hitting millennials in a different way. Then I'm like, okay, but apparently millennials, y'all loved some Little Mermaid. And so Black people are super, super geeked to see Halle Bailey in this role. And the first little sneak peek, baby snippet of a trailer came out, last week, and white folks that lost their whole supremacist mind. Like they are like, this is so unrealistic. She's a mermaid. Like they are like, how dare you bastardize our treasured childhood memory by casting this.
But mind you, the crab was Jamaican. The crab was Jamaican though. You gotta remember that. And there's no question about that. Right, just had a Jamaican crab, right? But Black Mermaid.
Right, and he was the only Jamaican. Everybody else was standard European English, right? But he was the only one with an accent. And so like white folks have really lost their entire minds. They are so upset. They're talking about it's unfair to redheads or gingers. It's discrimination.
It's unfair to the Danish. What are you talking about?
It is so utterly ridiculous. Like, for anyone that wants to ever try to utter the incensing words that racism is not as bad as we make it seem, Halle Bailey as Little Mermaid is Exhibit 1. Like, y'all are deep in your feelings. 1, and 2, feel compelled to share those feelings with the entire world about the wrongness of this young woman being cast, when I have heard her co-star Melissa McCartney praise her work ethic, praise her capacity as an actress, talk about how people were weeping on the set when she did Part of This World. I saw the director did an interview on the red carpet at the premiere and said, we saw her first and nobody even came close to the bar. She was it. We saw other people, but we saw her first and we knew she was it. She has the range. She's done an amazing job. We're proud of her. And that's not enough. Folks are still going to find a way to complain because they think that they own
everything.
Any iteration of a fictional character.
And the issue is, this is, you said Exhibit 1, which I found really important, because this is actually an issue with like all of the fandoms right now. Like,
oh my God! Like I just
geeky thing, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, the comic books.
Star
Don't let them put no
Wars.
woman or racial, ethnic minority or gay person in it, and they lose their minds. And it's like, y'all. There's still no shortage of roles for you.
Zero shortage of roles. And
That
guess
still
what?
represent the majority.
And you still also have more means to create your own media that tells a different version of that story with white characters. Like there's nothing impeding you from going out and doing that if you are so
Nothing.
inclined. So
But,
I'm
it's
just
no.
so sick of white people thinking they literally own everything. They really believe they are the default and the standard for all things in life. And you need their permission to go against that. And if you do not, then therefore you are wrong and they feel completely entitled to come after you. So,
It's awful.
hey, you don't want to see this beautiful, talented black woman as Ariel? Guess what? Don't buy a ticket. It's
Right.
really that easy.
That's simple.
I'm not
But, you know, they
interested in
review
seeing
bomb
another
this stuff
slave
now.
narrative. I'm not going to buy a ticket. Like, I'm not interested in another major Hollywood promotion of a slave narrative as the only way to portray the lived experiences of black folks. So guess what? Whenever the next one comes out, and there will be one, I don't want to go see it. I'm not going to buy a ticket. Same thing. Y'all just stay at home. Stay at home. Don't pull it up on Disney Plus when it comes out. It's quite easy. And that is my
Quite
last
easy.
nerve.
Yeah. Well, thank
Oh
you
my
for sharing
goodness.
your last nerve. I agree with you entirely. It's awful.
Yes. I'm going to leave some space for you this season, though, for some last nerves. You know, I always got something to say.
Oh yeah, for sure. I always got something to say. Don't worry. I'm good. Well, thank y'all so much.
All righty. Thank y'all. And we will see y'all next week.
That's right. Stay blessed.
Peace.
When you're building a culture of belonging, every word counts. That's why Textio brings the world's most advanced language insights into your hiring and employer brand content. Our industry-leading approach to artificial intelligence and machine learning provides the tools needed to find more diverse candidates. In short, Textio builds more equitable workspaces, guiding businesses and writing more inclusive job posts. And we're building on that success by bringing even more products to the market for all people who share our belief that language matters. Words have power, and at Textio, we harness that power to increase the access and availability of value-driven work for everyone.